Welcome to another episode Out of the Blank podcast. He was on the first time talking about psychedelic experiences, but then I got interested in something that came across my way when I saw an SNL skit with a lovely man who seems to be running the world, or at least creating vehicles that'll be able to do that for us at some point. And it's James, man. You got to tell me about the crypto. Why are you interested in it? How have you become good at it? I'm curious because I want to do it myself.
So I guess, long story short, I've been in the finance industry now since I guess going back to 2006. I was really I guess really what got me set at that point was just kind of doing stocks and at that point collecting money, doing retirement accounts for people. And I can't even think, I'm thinking 2009, 2010 is really when crypto started hitting, I'd say kind of mainstream at this point, or at least people started hearing a little bit about Bitcoin. And now obviously to today, you've got, gosh, any number of different coins out there from kind of what you mentioned, probably Dogecoin to Shibu. Hell, I even heard there's a scam coin out there that I saw had a market capitalization of like 2.7 billion. So it's really something that I personally have had to pay a little bit of attention to as well. I can tell you, I have not actually been trading crypto for any more than, I think, 2.5 years at this point. I kind of started dabbling in it a little bit back in 2019, and definitely more this year. I'm a lot more active in my trading. And so I can kind of say that's kind of my experience in crypto early on, but been trading and been in the financial markets for over 15 years at this point.
Okay, well, let me take the questions this way. Like we has conversations, so if you feel free to correct me on some things, I'm going to get a lot of things wrong here. How do I know what app to choose if I'm going to dive down this endeavor? How am I going to know that? Because every time I was trying to download one of these apps, because there's a lot, like you said, a lot of coins out there, and the Dogecoin, I'm like, that was a meme or what the like. At this point, like when I watched the SNL thing, it was fascinating to me because I think he was rolling with a lot of the stuff they were saying and it was kind of taken as a joke, but it also was highlighting about how much of kind of a little bit of BS it seemed like they were kind of pointing the finger at. It was like, it is kind of like nuts. It's all made up and it's all crazy. It's all this, but this is where cash is going. Cash is now turning all digital. I mean, the bank says you have $20,000 or $30,000 in your account, but then when you go and say I want my $20,000 and $30,000, they go, we don't have that here. It's like, what? Well, you have the money in your account. You're digital. Yeah, the numbers will go down when you scan, but now it's like eventually going to be phased out of cash. So I'm wondering, with all these apps, how do I check if they're verified? How do I know which ones are acceptable? Like you said, scam coin. That's everything has told me in my life never to trust a scam, never to go into this. Unlike most of our politicians that want to elect Bernie Madoff, rest in peace, biggest scam artist of all time. I want to know, how do I know I'm not getting played by something bigger?
I can honestly tell you, in my opinion, that is one of the challenges in the industry right now, because there is so many out there. One of the things that I'll just kind of tell you that I would probably recommend for somebody, there is a couple brokers here in the U.S. that are, I would say, much more secure. And I'm just going to kind of go on a side tangent on that, just real quick to kind of give you some more context. The U.S. government is really starting to crack down on cryptocurrency. I would say really this year is really kind of where they're starting to do some of that. I don't know if you know much about leverage or margin in trading or anything yet.
I'm guessing it's because for so long, crypto coin and all these things have not really been regulated as well when it comes to the government wants a little piece and they're not able to figure out how to get a piece out of that.
And you're exactly right. And I think that's where it's like this year, boom, the lights kind of turned on. Bitcoin it hit up to 65,000. So I think the government is very much behind the eight ball in terms of kind of getting a grasp of what's actually going on. And to some degree, I think that's good for the average person like me and you. but at the same time, some of those protections that you're kind of looking for. I'm trying to think of the one out of Japan, but I'm sure, as you know, there's been a lot of brokers that have turned out to be scams. I think there was one recently just out of Africa that got busted. The guy ran off with everybody's money. So that really is a big concern. Kraken is the one that I personally use myself. It is actually regulated with the US more than most other companies. It also gives you more leverage, which just going to say that many people may or may not know exactly what that is. But in terms of, let's just say you've got $5,000 in your trading account, Kraken's going to allow you to actually get a loan and use more money than you actually have in your account. Now, there is obviously a lot of risk to that. You're still, if say Bitcoin dropped to zero, you would be on the hook for all that money. But in terms of, let's just say it goes up just maybe $1,000, well, that $5,000 that you had, you can actually trade it like you had 25,000. So you can make more money a little bit quicker by using margin. And you can also sell and make money when other trading brokers do not allow that. So that's really the main reason I use Kraken. And it is, they are the only ones that are actually approved to do some of that margin trading within crypto here in the US. Now, one last thing is you can do it outside of the US and you can get leverage, but that is ultimately part of the crackdown that the US government's starting to do. And like here in the US, Kraken only allows you to do 5 times margin. So if you got 5,000, you can trade it like 25,000. Previous to like really this last year and even into 2020 at this point, you could actually get 125 times leverage with brokers that were out in a different country. And that is ultimately where I think a lot of the US is starting to crack down, because some of those people, hey, they bought Bitcoin when it was $2,000, something like that years ago in 2019. And now ultimately at this point in time, they had 125 leverage. They made hundreds and thousands of dollars. And now the government wants a piece of theirs.
Okay.
So
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm probably going to end up doing it just so I can be able to, because you say a lot and I failed math so many times. So this is very going to be difficult for me to tackle. I can understand space dimensional shifts in time or whatever the hell you want to talk about. When you start talking about this, I lose my track when I hear a 1 and a 0 involved in the same word or sentence. How do I make money though on it? Like if I'm going to, understand the Kraken's a good site to use, but if I was going to start up, like, is it about purchasing things that when they're at a rise or a low? And how do you know that you're not going to be like, are you selling things even though you don't have the money for it? So it's kind of like you're screwing someone else's pooch, or what is it?
Here's what I would say. That's honestly a very tricky, I guess, answer for me to give, because I would tell you, like, what I've learned in my trading over the years is there's a million different ways and a million different strategies that people employ to make money. But in general, I would say you want to buy when things are starting to go up. So like you go with the momentum, and you want to sell when things are going down. So I would say just in general, you want to follow momentum. That would be my simplest answer to that. I think what we have seen really within this last month, I mean, we've seen, I can't remember when Bitcoin hit its all-time high. Give me just a second here. I'll take a quick peek. But so on April 16th, maybe 13th, Bitcoin, just as an example, hit its all-time high. And we've actually almost hit 29,000 just within the last few weeks. So I think there actually is some major changes that are starting to kind of happen. I know with like my trading firm that I trade with, Maverick Trading, they have been actually calling it somewhat of the crypto bubble that's been bursting. I don't know if we're exactly there personally, but there's no doubt saying that, hey, we went from 65,000 and we almost hit 30,000. That's a huge drop. And that's something that you maybe not, you don't necessarily see sometimes in stock markets or the bond markets. So honestly, I would say this, like this crypto world that many people are getting exposed to right here and now, it is a very interesting market in the fact that, I mean, you can, it can go up to 65,000, but you can lose it in just in a couple days.
I'm guessing it's like the trend of roller skates. Like eventually there were only a few people that had roller skates, but then that became this big boom where you used to have places for roller skating and all this stuff. Then now if you have roller skates, you're seen as a weirdo. It's going to be like that market. Sooner or later, it's going to be exposed to so many people. They're all going to join it. Then it's going to kind of lose value a little bit. But when you say 29,000, for instance, on the whatever the market is that a worth of one coin, or is that worth of like, what does that mean? How much money do you have if it's that 29,000?
You're right. No, it is $29,000 for one Bitcoin.
Jesus.
And it really is. And that's where, honestly, the government's kind of cracking down on this. Cause and I'll just tell you, I'm blown away by this, maybe just as much as you are, just coming into the markets, maybe even here in the near future. I remember when Bitcoin, was in the hundreds of dollars. And I kind of even joke that at one point people were selling it for $25,000. And now you're getting these one Bitcoin where they're $65,000. So it just kind of blows my mind.
Well, what do you do with a coin? What happens? Like, if I have a coin, how do I make more coins to be able to sell more?
Well, so I think that's kind of where I'm actually looking into things myself. One of the things that I'm sure you've probably heard right now is like Tesla. Up until recently, Tesla actually said, hey, you can come in and buy a car from us with Bitcoin. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity hopefully coming here in the near future where, hey, let's say you charge me something, you charge me a fee, I can possibly buy or pay you with the Bitcoin. We're not exactly there right here, right now, but the fact that Tesla kind of came up with it, I know Mark Cuban is actually allowing people to come in and buy Dallas Mavericks memorabilia. I think even tickets with Dogecoin.
It's like the non-fundable tokens. What do they even mean?
Bingo.
Dude, I got confused when I was playing an online game called Habbo, where you would go to a gas station like a 7-Eleven in your area and you would buy a $25 voucher and then you would redeem it online and get like 5 tokens. It's kind of like that. But how do I get a token? How do I get a coin? Do I kill someone and grab the coin like Mario, or what is it?
So they have what's called a wallet. So you have these crypto wallets. It's kind of this, I would say more or less a file. It's an encrypted file, and me and you can transfer them. It's like, so say I've got 10 Bitcoin, for example, and you wanted to buy one, or you wanted to buy half of one, or a 0.0000001 of a Bitcoin, because that's kind of the uniqueness about Bitcoin is you don't need to just go out and buy one Bitcoin for $30,000. Many of us are not going to be able to start in that game at that point, but you might be able to spend $100 and get a 0.00001. So anyway, you would be able to just transfer me that $100. I would say probably the safest place to do it is through brokers like Kraken, the Robin Hoods, the different brokers like that. That's probably the easiest way for you to do that. But I will tell you, my first Bitcoin that I ever bought years ago, and I will say I used it on some stuff maybe you weren't supposed to back then, some of the psychedelics. But back then, I bought it from Joe Schmo off the street from a website where people were just actually trading it back and forth. And again, I just sent some money to his bank account in dollars, and then he would send back Bitcoin into my electronic wallet. And that's more or less how you go about it. And then from that wallet, say it jumps back up to 100,000. At that point in time, you can redeem it back into dollars.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but now from what I've just understood by this, which I feel like I'm getting a bit of it, definitely have a toe in the pool. I'm not all the way in. I'm not even to the kneecap or the ankle, I would say. But
it's a deep pool.
So the digital wallet, for instance, you 0.0001 of a Bitcoin. Eventually, you can use that little bit of cash and that little bit of the 1/10 or 1,000th of a coin to be able to double and triple. And eventually, once you get to enough money by selling or investing or doing whatever trading, you can get it into a full coin, which you can choose to keep and build up your profits, where you'll eventually have a bunch of coins, or you can eventually sell them for a very high, large amount of money. But the trick is trying to invest whatever that 0.1 or whatever that coin is, a piece of it, into something that is doing very, very well. So then you have a large return, kind of like stocks. When people go into a stock and the stock is up and the stock is down, eventually that'll affect your digital wallet, which you can use to trade to either extend out your Bitcoin allowance, or you can cash out, kind of like a casino.
Absolutely. Nope. You pretty much nailed it. I mean, I think really the challenge, yeah, I mean, what I would say is like what you mentioned, way easier said than done. I will say trading is the absolute hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's the most interesting thing I've ever done in my life, but it is very challenging. What I always tell people is like, you've got to realize no matter what your age is you're going against guys like a Warren Buffett who've been doing this for 40, 50, 60 years. And there's a lot of games and a lot of head games of, I'll just use like a couple of weeks ago when Bitcoin was at 65,000, there was a group of people, whether, and I know they obviously didn't mean for the market to drop. Nobody ever wants the market to drop, but there were people who were buying crypto or buying Bitcoin at $65,000, thinking that it was going to go up to $100,000. It's really hard or challenging to know when to buy it because the timing of it is so challenging. Because now, okay, if you bought that, and I'm sure you may have heard some of the horror stories, but there are some people that were like mortgaging their homes to buy some Bitcoin. And if they bought it at 65,000, well, this morning as we speak, I've got it at 36,000. Well, damn, you might have lost half of your money. Yeah. I mean, it's just not a good thing. So there is a little bit of nuance into some techniques on when you should buy and when you should sell. One of the things that I personally believe is, and it's very challenging to do because I think it's actually kind of against human instinct. And this is kind of where in our last conversation, I kind of alluded to one of the things that psychedelics actually helps me with is some of the just natural human instincts that we have. I almost have to train myself to do the opposite because when it's up at 65,000 at its all-time highs, that's actually a good time to sell out and take a little bit of profit. You don't need to take all of it, but when everybody else is thinking you should buy it because it's going to 100, maybe you should sell. And when everybody thinks, okay, hey, it's at 30,000, now it's dropping to 0, maybe you should actually buy. So I'm of the opinion you almost do the opposite of what most people believe.
Yeah. My thought is it's probably, I have a feeling it's going to crash. I think the housing market's going to crash too, but I see a giant spark in it back up. And the reason why I've been predicting, I think and I've guessed a lot of shit that's came true. So I would take my word on some of this stuff, but I was telling people close to me, like, hey, I think the housing market's going to crash. And they're like, when? Because everything I've usually said has been right. And they've seen that. So they've asked me like, when? And I'm like, I'm starting to see a lot of ads now. And I called it way before the ads started happening. People saying it's the best time to buy a home. To me, that means that something's going down and they want to sell everything that they got and make sure you're buy it, and then you're kind of fucked with it. But people say, well, it's the best time. Why would you tell them that? People don't tell you they're doing bad. They tell you they're doing amazing. You know what I mean? That's the type of thinking. But when it comes to investing into crypto, for instance, and it's very, very hard for someone that's watching this game, and we say the mind games, for instance, when someone is like an Elon Musk of the thing that can move by and be able to get money and transfer stuff so quick with a large amount you have more chips on the table. Kind of like Andrew Dice Clay is probably the best example of probably one of the best gamblers I have ever heard stories from, at least. He took his kids to college on $100 from gambling. He was like, I'm going to get you guys to go to college and fund out your your recording time. And they're like, what? Went to the casino with $100, came out with a couple million. You got to make sure once you get up to the higher amount of cash and the more cash you're playing with, you could do bigger moves, kind of like chess. But it's or checkers, for instance. You're a king. You're jumping around the board. You can jump front, back, whatever the hell. You can go wherever the hell you want because you have more than something else. So you have more chips. So eventually you can make bigger moves, making you more profit, or also losing it as well, too. And here's where the mind games come into play, is that when someone invests their whole entire home into Bitcoin, they have money to fund. Maybe they're at 6.9 whatever of a coin. They start to look at, okay, the market is crashing. Do I hold or do I sell now because it could get worse? And then they see it spark back up and they're like, fuck, I sold my stuff, I
missed, yeah.
But is it like stocks where they have certain things like I can invest into this with my Bitcoin and then I get money from that? Or is it type of thing? Because I could tell you right now, before the pandemic, 2 weeks before, I got into a podcast with a stockbroker. I never posted his episode because it went 30 minutes long, because we talked 20 minutes stocks the first, and then the rest of the time it was like, sure. Yeah. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell are we doing? You're not giving me anything to talk about. But I told him, I was like, I bet the safest stock to buy in is toilet paper because it never goes up and it never goes down. And then 2 weeks later, COVID hit and everyone was buying the shit out of toilet paper. So I'm just saying, is it like that? Because I will toss you out some amazing shit where you're going to make a lot of money. All I ask is for a very small portion.
And honestly, I here's what I would say is there's probably going to be a lot of people that absolutely disagree with me and disagree with you on that idea. But my personal trading, I absolutely believe that. I kind of am of the, I'd say kind of contrarian type of thinking. It very much just matches my personality. I've always kind of done my own thing and beat to my own drum type of a scenario. So for me, that is exactly how I approach the markets. But I will say that's not the only way to win in this game at all. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it is very strange. I'm of the opinion that Bitcoin, just like you said, it might crash. I'm not sure what crashing mean. Does it go down to 20,000? I think there's an argument that it could get down to 20,000. I'm not sure that it will, because I would say 29,000, where it kind of bounced from, is another level that I've kind of been watching to see, okay, what's it going to do around here? Because it just makes sense that there was buyers there in the past. There might be buyers there in the future. So far, it has held that level. But as to why, I think that's kind of the cocktail talk. Me and you can have beer, blah, blah, blah. We can discuss why things have done this, why they haven't done that. But I truly do. I believe that there is potential that the market is going to crash at some point. I'm not sure we are there. To your point with the real estate, I'm right there with you. I think it's going to eventually pop as well. I tend to want to see what happens here after the moratorium ends at June 30th. I think that's going to be a very important time. But so yes, and long story short, I think you're exactly right. I think we are in a bubble. I don't think there's any argument of that. When it bursts, however, that is, I think, kind of that's the $1 million question. I mean, if we could all know when it was going to burst or when it was going to stop, we would be all making millions of dollars. But that really is the challenge, because I can just give you an idea. I mean, last Friday, the stock market's almost at its all-time highs again, which just it blows my mind. I think that the average person knows and feels like the market's not right. It's not, I'd say, maybe back to normal. We're kind of getting there, but I think we, the vast majority of us have an idea that it's not in a great place. I think there's a lot of headwinds ahead of us, but as a trader,
in my mind, I think the rational explanation for the weird ups and downs and highs and lows and all this stuff and all like the kind of like, oh, you need to buy now, even though there's an impending crash or something. I think it comes from a point of like, you got to think of like it's sporadic movements. That's very hard to coordinate. So you got to kind of expect like a weird blind side or type of thing happening. But then there's that little conspiracy voice in my head that goes, think, Robbie, think. If you are running this, you have been on Bitcoin since it was created, and you had all these coins, and now the market is starting to become really, really saturated because now everyone's in it. The best way to really do it, if you can rig the system, is to crash it so people sell all their shit, and then you get more coins. So when it sparks back up again, you're a fucking billionaire. But my main question, I know that sounds crazy, but that could be a possibility. Don't rule it out.
I don't think it's crazy at all. I think there's more games like that happen in this I'd say financial industry than people even realize. And I think that's, to be honest with you, that's what actually scares me, is most people don't understand that I'll use Warren Buffett just as an example. Have you ever heard of Paul Tudor Jones?
No.
Okay, he's another well-known trader, made a lot of money on the 1987 crash. Granted, he was a great trader before then, but he really made a ton of money on the 1987 crash. But one of the things that I learned recently, and for all your viewers, if anybody's ever thinking about getting into trading, one of the movies that I highly recommend that you watch, just so you can kind of understand some of the games that happen. Anyway, so Paul Tudor Jones has this movie called Trader. It kind of talks about him and how he was approaching the markets. And it was right before the 1987 crash. And anyway, that's when he made a ton of money. But anyway, one of the things in that movie that really just kind of really made me have a much different idea of the markets and all these smart people in it, and kind of to go along with your conspiracy theory, which it's not a conspiracy theory. It is an absolute way that people trade. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I trade that almost every single morning with the stocks. But
I listen to that voice sometimes, but when it starts telling me to jump off really tall buildings, I'm like, he can take a back seat for a little bit.
And there's times to kind of ignore it, but in general, it's a great trading strategy because, so Paul Tudor Jones, going back to him, and I'll just kind of finish with this, is he in that movie kind of mentions, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take some of our money, and keep in mind, he had like $900 million back in the 80s. So, I mean, he had a big bunch of money that he could play with. So anyway, he went in and said, all right, and I don't know what stock or whatever it was, but he goes in there's like, all right, we're going to sell the stock or whatever, and we're going to actually move the market with this small portion that we have. And when I say small portion, that was probably millions and millions of dollars. But anyway, he moved the market. Well, now the average trader, the average guy like me and you, when we are initially taught to how to trade, as I mentioned to you, go with the momentum. So in that movie, he says, all right, we're going to move the market. And then soon as everything starts dropping and everybody else starts piling in, we're going to take the rest of our capital and we're going to buy with everything that we got. So he more or less suckers you down to sell. Average guys like me and you, we're now selling. Now he has somebody to buy from. And boom, he has millions of dollars. Me and you have $1,000 here and there. He runs us over like just a freight train. And that's unfortunately, I think, a game that a lot of people do not understand in this
You
industry
got
is
played.
you got played because somebody had maybe a more, I don't say civilized, but a more advanced idea. Um, because I think the average trading book, the average person, like I just told you, is like, okay, buy momentum, sell momentum. That sounds super easy. It sounds great. And sometimes it's a great strategy to make money. But at the same time, when it fails, it's actually a great time to be on the opposite end of things of when everybody was telling you to buy a home. Well, actually, maybe you should think about selling a home if you had one. Or when Bitcoin's at 65,000 and everybody's telling you to buy Bitcoin, maybe you should sell Bitcoin. When everybody's saying, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going to be crashing, maybe you should buy Bitcoin, because if they're selling, you're getting it at a discount, and maybe that's what drives it up.
When it comes to like increasing your profits though, like things that you can invest into now, is it as simple as investing in something? Let's say you can invest in Pepsi or invest in that. It's not like stocks. You can't do that.
You can.
Because I'll
No,
give you
like
some things to invest in right now if that's what it is.
I absolutely believe you can do that. Now, one of the ones that I have actually done pretty darn well with recently was actually Molson Coors stock. Um, Honestly, they were kind of beat down, and I'm not so sure I exactly know why, but my initial idea is like Coors, just as an example. I know we have Blue Moon here in Denver. But those were beers that while the pandemic was raging, I mean, those are the ones that you have on tap typically. So when restaurants are closed, that stock kind of got hit pretty hard. Well, there was a lot of people that were just saying, well, yeah, Molson Coors is done, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know that I necessarily agreed with that. I actually bought into Molson Coors kind of when it was at its low. People were just like super down on. I even talked to a few people in my firm with it, and they were like, "No, that just it doesn't look at it like a good stock. You're buying it at the bottom." Long story short, it's actually been one of my best stocks actually for this year, and I don't know that I see it actually going down or obviously going down anymore. I actually think it's going to continue going up. But kind of just that same idea. When people tell me it's bad, it's wrong, I tend to actually start looking into opportunities to spend a little bit of money to actually buy and sell those things. Like when things are too high, I consider selling. When things are too low, I consider buying.
So can I give you a couple sales pitches on some things to maybe buy?
I am all ears.
First off, my clothing brand. Just kidding.
Absolutely.
Just kidding.
No,
No,
I'm
but
in for it.
legit actual things to maybe buy into. I recommend, and this is just a thought, and I'll explain it a little bit more because I'm going to say it and you're going to be like, what? Saltines. Now I say that and you go, okay, what the hell does that make sense to buy saltines in? And the way I'm examining it is it's now approaching summertime. It's approaching this new type of weather change and it's getting warmer out. People want to experience time with their families because for so long, or times with friends, because for so long they've been locked inside of their own house, not being able to hang out with one another. Now we're kind of thriving and wanting communication. So if you invest in saltines, what I'm saying is how many chili cookouts are going to be happening this summer? How many barbecues?
Absolutely.
How many things where saltine crackers are going to be? It sounds like the dumbest stock to buy into, but if you really examine it, it's something that might be cheap, but people can buy a shit ton of it and not really break the bank. So that's probably going to increase on the fact that people are going to be hanging out more with their friends, going to race games, going to football games, going to these things that they haven't been able to go to and have been experiencing on a TV for so long. Now I'm saying this on May 31st. So if this comes true, whether you invest or not, I just want to make sure it's logged. Yeah.
No, well, no, I think you're dead on. Actually, I know what I've actually been calling it is kind of the reopening trade, and I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of calling it that. But to your point of we've all been kind of locked down, we've all been more or less restricted into what our normal everyday lives are, and Now, I just briefly looked it up. That was kind of what I was looking at. But saltines, just as an example, are owned by, it looks like Nabisco. Um, and Kellogg's is another one that owns that company. But like just a company that I recently bought into, which I would say hasn't been doing great right now, but it's actually the Kraft Heinz company, and kind of that same idea of, I actually thought a lot of the condiments, the Heinz ketchup, just as an example, was going to be a boom actually this summer with the barbecues, all this stuff where people are finally getting out. I know on my vacation just this last week, I know we mostly ate. I had some steak, some brats, and hamburgers. So I mean, I'm already buying those things that you just mentioned, like the saltines, the ketchup and
I'm
mustard,
telling you,
those
bro.
types of things. Yeah, I do. I think it's still a lot. Now, some of it I think's already been happening, because I think the challenge in trading, whether it's crypto or anything, is if you can actually get in early before the masses come in.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, like if somebody else starts telling you, hey, saltines are the great thing, the more and more people that start telling you, one, it probably tells you are right, which is obviously good. But then at the same time, it might already be played out, because once everybody starts buying in, how many more buyers are there? It's like if everybody's already at the party, there's no new people to come in and push the prices higher.
Who's buying
Um,
saltines though? That's the thing.
but you know, and I think you're exactly right. I still think there's more to be played on this summer. There's going to be a huge demand still.
I got
I
one
don't know that
more.
we know what it is.
I got
Okay.
one more for you. I don't know if it's the same thing, but the Blockbuster company. I know that sounds like that thing is done and dead, but the weirdest
Mm-hmm.
thing is I've been like thinking like Blockbuster seems like a good stock to get into. I don't even do stocks, but it just seems like
Yep.
I got the same feeling I got about toilet paper. But then they now released a documentary called The Last Blockbuster that's run by Kevin Smith, who played Jay and Silent Bob on Netflix. And now people are
Okay.
starting to, it's programming into people's head like, oh my God, like, oh, the whole thing was about people's experiences, all about like what I remember going in there. And then they asked for my ID. And then the dude would talk about his routine and how influential and how much he missed it and the nostalgic effect behind it. I think people are going to start seeing that come back. Do I think it's going to be like the regular stores? I don't know. But I think it's going to be this revamp where now it's going to take a whole new streaming platform. And that's the option and avenue to
Absolutely.
go down to, that they're going to make a lot more money because they're going to make it better than Netflix or better than these types of things. It's this weird, like, oh, the underdog or all this type of stuff. It's why I have my dodo
Correct.
bird as my mascot.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
No, and I
representation.
think, you're actually, there's a lot to that. And I think even to go along further in that, did you listen to like the GameStop and hear all that stuff that was going on?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I would say Blockbuster is exactly that, but I think that there is such a, and I'll have to do some research on that. Just the fact that you brought that up after we get done here, but I think that there is a completely different aspect of the market where like the average person, me and you, can all meet up on Reddit nowadays, and we can actually all pile in together just like they did with GameStop. And as I kind of told you, there's a lot of the different games that I'd say the big money, the wealthy can really play that the average person can't. But beyond that, that's a whole other rant I can probably go on. But like just GameStop was an example where a lot of big hedge funds were actually shorting the GameStop stock. Um, so ultimately through Reddit, all the the people ended up buying, and it more or less blew up this big hedge fund with I don't know, it may not have been trillions, but anyway, billions of dollars. And I think that very same thing can kind of happen with things like the Blockbuster, because there are these companies out there that are supposed to die. And as a big time investor, that seems like a safe bet. I have all these trillions of dollars, so I'm just going to bet against the GameStops of the world, the AMCs of the world, maybe even the Blockbusters of the world, because they are supposed to die. But what's really cool is guys like me and you, the average person, are coming together through social media, and we're actually doing something, and we're kind of forcing the hands of the wealthy, of the big money. And frankly, they actually won, which I would say, I don't know that we've ever really seen that happen before. And I kind of think that's something that we, again, even are seeing to some degree in Bitcoin, because there's so many people, I think, that thought when Bitcoin first came out, it was only selling for $25. Oh, this is a scam. This is just blah, blah, blah. I mean, whatever you want to call it. And here we are, we're talking at it like it's bad at $37,000, but we all know, hey, it just ran up to 65. If you'd have told me it's going to go to $65,000 3 years ago, I would have told you were just on drugs. You're losing your mind. But here we are. And I think kind of the idea of anything's possible kind of is right now. I don't know what's going to happen in all this. I think it just blows my mind, and it's fascinating.
With you saying that GameStop thing makes me think a little bit more on the crash aspect of things. They're going to have to find a new way, because they realize that if they just eventually look like this thing where a bunch of people just lost a bunch of money, you saw these giant wealthy people that were sitting on top of this balcony pointing and laughing with their cell phones, and pictures were taken of them. The issue is when you fuck with people and they see that you have more power than them, they want to chip you down. And that's what happened. Social media threw at them and made that whole entire thing tank, where people were freaking the fuck out. Like, do I drop it? Do I do this? Do I do that? Because their old tricks are not working anymore. They're going to have to find new ways to adapt. So now we can't piss off the public, because we realize we're going to be losing money. Now it's threatening them. So now they're going to try and find a new way, whether it's in the next year, whether it's in the next couple of months, when crypto, I think, will drop, is because they found a new method to do it. And we'll just look at it like it's a drop in the market, when it's probably them finding a new pathway or new avenue to be able to pull it down without them being, I guess, reprehensible for the things that they've done. But when I say Blockbuster, you can't buy into AMC. You can't buy into these main brands. You got to find the ones that somehow, like you said, are still hanging on, where people are walking around. Kids, the nostalgia factor in the world right now is at an all-time high. Kids want to buy the old shit they never got to experience. Why is that not being made anymore? Why is Johnny Bravo not on TV anymore? Talk about kids that want that nostalgia feel, because it brings them back to a simpler time. Blockbuster coming back, it's an unseen thing, because a lot of people are like, I remember how much fucking time I had fun there. Let's bring it back so my kid can experience the fun I had. It's not a steady, constant thing. It's going to be something that's going to jump really high, and then you pull the fuck out, because it's going to end up dropping again when people realize, oh, now I know why I never fucking wanted to go back here again. I just remember all the good shit. It's graduation goggles. People think of that when it comes to cookouts and barbecues. It's a time to get saltines, buy into the market when it gets to the highest. It's not going to be billions of dollars. It's going to be higher than it's ever been before, which it might be a small fraction compared to iPhones or something like that. That's the time you jump on it, ride the escalator up, and then you hop the fuck off when you know it's going to an eventual down.
And you've actually, I mean, you nailed trading in a nutshell.
Thank God I'm understanding
to your point. I mean, and you really are. I mean, I think my guess is that probably comes a little bit more natural to you. I'm guessing you've kind of gone on your own path. It's like you don't follow the crowds. It would be my guess. And especially just kind of the way that you explained that, because that's exactly how I believe in things. And that tells me that you probably could do well in the markets, because I think that thinking is what ultimately does pretty well, or you can learn some strategies that do pretty well. Like one of the things that I always love doing, and I love talking to people about trading, is when people start telling me things, because I've been doing this now for, like I said, since 2006. when people start giving me advice or, hey, you should go out and buy this Dogecoin, you should be go out, buy Bitcoin. It's like, ding, 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 ding. That's my warning signs typically that the market's at the high. When everybody starts telling me what to do, the party's over. You've kind of had your fun. Everybody else is now starting to buy in. They're coming in on this. They should have been in a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever the case is. But now everybody's flocking in, which to me, to the big money, that's kind of those big signs like, all right, now everybody's in. Let's hook, line, and sinker. Now we start selling against them and we run them over. And now that's the new game. That's kind of that whole conspiracy thing that you're talking about, which again, I'm not going to call it even a conspiracy theory. It's just, that's one of the great strategies in the markets of you look for the points in time where there's this big extremes of everybody either wants to buy or everybody wants to sell. And if you can actually take the opposite side of that, and frankly, that's the hard trade. I mean, that's really the kind of counterintuitive idea, but that counterintuitiveness ultimately can pay you extremely well.
It's kind of like you have to understand that this is a game that you're kind of like walking in like a little bit of a toddler into a classroom of like with the teacher. And now you got to kind of find the way to have the upper hand on the teachers, and the teachers are the big business people that have been involved with this since the start. I mean, I've heard many podcasts where famous people have talked about, I was given like 50 coins and I don't even know what the fuck that means. And then you realize like what it actually ends up becoming. And you're like, there's one guy that was giving them out once someone gave them to him. Like he said in an episode when it was first starting out that Bitcoin, it was this thing, send me Bitcoin, as a joke, and people were legit sending him coins, and then he ended up having like hundreds and hundreds of coins, and the next thing you know, he's just like, I don't know what to do with this shit, and he's like tossing it out like it's nothing, giving it to like people. There was he was actually doing good stuff with it. He was like giving it to people that have lost a lot of money where they could sell it and then have the profit off of that too. It actually helped a lot of people out too. It's just interesting because you realize it's a shark world, man. And yet, if you're going to end up being in this game, it's kind of like selling drugs. When you're involved in a lot of the drug selling, maybe not when it's psychedelics, but when it comes to just weed, cocaine, whatever the hell it is, if you'll know if you're fit for that life, because you start to realize how fucking weird and how backstabby it is, where it's like, oh, this guy stole my stash, or this guy did this for this, or this guy short me a gram. If that's not comfortable to you, which it's not for me, then you shouldn't be involved into it, which is why I don't even know where to start. We'll talk off air. You can send me the apps that you use and I'll try it out, but I'm so frugal with my money. And I know that I might do well when it comes to being able to guess a certain rise and be able to pull out and type of thing too. But it just gets so complicated. I'm glad at least I got a firm basis or understanding somewhat of what this is, because people will talk about non-fungible tokens and all these things. And I'm like, I don't get it. It's like, but then you start really examining our banking system, for instance, all the ones and zeros that are in our account, even though they might not even have the money on hand. It's like, we don't have it on hand right now. We have to wait. It's like, everything's digital now. You got to realize the market's evolving into something completely different. Eventually, like giving out coins in the beginning of it was to put the money out there, get that inflation going. And then now it's becoming this thing of people selling them. And now if you hoard all the coins and people have less, you either got to create more coins, or now you own the market and you're able to sell them to anybody that is desperate enough to spend so much money to be able to buy a sliver of that token.
And, I think that you've more or less kind of brought up a subject that I've believed in for a long time. I mean, I think we all kind of grew up, and I won't even say all, but at least for me, when I grew up, I had the idea that, okay, the dollar is the mightiest currency. Everybody uses it. And truly, it is still the world's reserve currency. But I think that people are starting to have kind of a different idea of what a dollar is, because I think that there's the argument that you can make of, okay, there's a ton of income equality right now. The CEOs are making millions, and whether they are doing as much as the little guy who's making only the minimum wage, I think there's just this big idea that like we just don't like with the way things are going on. And to your point of the bank, I mean, how many, I will say right now, I have a lot more in cash than I probably have in the past, but it's mostly because of kind of the pandemic. I didn't know if there was going to be a run on the banks or whatever, but regardless of that, I still know the banks are always pushing me to use the debit card, the credit card, more so than actually me and you just exchanging cash. I'm here in Colorado. I'm sorry, where are you at?
I'm in Maryland.
You're in Maryland. I know for a fact it's going to be way easier for me just to pay you through a debit card, some electrical means, than me actually sending you some cash.
Yeah. That's my conspiracy theory about the pandemic thing is when we all went over to card because cash can infect you or do this type of thing. Card's safer. Yep. That whole thing is like, then inflation, when the bill or the money is going to drop, it's going to go back down a little bit to where it's not so high, even though prices are increasing right now, is because once they can just take cash out of circulation with the fear of a pandemic or getting a disease or something that seems like it's never going to end. I mean, we're a year almost and a half into this thing. You start to realize something where it's like, what's the incentive for them to want to bring it back when they have you buy the digital balls now? Everything is online. I have direct deposit and I don't have any apps to be able to check my shit. So I just call my bank. Did I get a deposit of this amount of money? You did. Don't you have the app? Yeah. No, I don't know my username and password because you make me add a lowercase, a digit, and all this other shit in it where I can't remember it. I want to check my money, but I also like the feel of it and knowing I put it in there. So I know it's there. It's making sure it went there. You know, when I send something in the mail, I'm constantly like tracking it, texting when the fuck did it arrive yet? It said it was going to be there earlier today. Didn't get it yet, man. It gets me so angry because I need to physically see it to get dropped there. So I know it made it to its destination, didn't get picked up or some other type of bullshit that happens along the way. So many times you get an excuse of, I don't know where it went. What do you mean you don't know where it went? It was $850 million to mental health. And Balasio's wife was like, oh, we lost it. Fucking, I guess so. That's what happens in the world.
Well, and I think that, I mean, so to go even further in that, like one of my kind of conspiracies or what have you, I guess, is
say hidden truths.
And I think that's really what it is. It's just more a hidden truth. It's not so much a conspiracy. It's just the fact. And it kind of goes back into kind of what I was talking about originally with the crypto in the US kind of cracking down on it. But when you use your card, or like when I pay you with a card, instantly it's trackable. It's traceable from your bank to my bank. If I send you cash, they can't really follow that. They lose some control, which is what cryptocurrency and kind of long story short of as to why it was actually designed. I mean, it was designed to get the government out of right now, interest rates, they can do whatever they want with them. They're at all-time lows right now. Now there's talks that inflation's going up, so they're going to have to start restricting or raising interest rates to kind of restrict the flow of money. They're the ones that are doing all this. I mean, they're the ones that are creating this mess half the time anyway. And it's not really benefiting the vast majority of us. The ones that are actually, in my opinion, that are benefiting the most from it are the elites. It's the wealthy class that can ultimately do as much trading and investing. And I would say it's the investment class. But kind of going back to that point, it's like if you can track money moving hands, you can also tax it. They're going to get paid. Crypto, their reason they're cracking down on it, in my opinion, is because they want paid. And that's ultimately, again, kind of where I think they're moving away from the dollar, the actual cash, the greenback dollar, where me and you can exchange dollars. but they can't track that. So
the
I
apps are
think
named appropriately. Robinhood,
yes,
cracking the tentacles of business. Robinhood, giving from or taking from the rich and giving
yeah,
to the poor. That's the whole thing. Is like you saw it best in that GameStop picture when all those people were fucking
exactly.
laughing at people that just lost so much of their life. Maybe like even a Wall Street scenario where people are jumping off buildings and shit because they don't know where to turn to if you lose all of your fucking funding and shit. It's Wolf of Wall Street's the best example of that movie. He's selling
It
penny
is.
stocks of and hyping them up in such a way that it convinces you to buy into these things. These people spend their life savings or something into it. He didn't give a fuck about those people. He only gave a shit about making money and making his life successful because he feels like the system has fucked him. And sadly, the system is a pay to play thing. You got more money, you got more tries, more lives, more whatever the hell you want to be able to move around and do whatever the hell you want in a system that's pay to play. If you got a little bit, it's going to be harder for you to be able to make a splash in that giant ass pond. The issue is when you make that splash, nothing's incentivizing you to help out those people because you look at them like, I could do it, you can do it. It's not so simple. If anything, if I became rich, I would try and find best ways to be able to dismantle some of that shit when it comes to making it easier. You shouldn't have to struggle to survive, but they need money from it. If they see you making money, it becomes this thing like, fuck you, pay me. And then it's like, why? I don't even know you. It's like, yeah, but I want a piece. I want a piece. Uncle Sam wants a piece. Everybody wants a piece. It's like
everybody wants a piece of the pie.
The fucking kid that just shows up to your birthday party for the cake. He just wants a piece. He doesn't give a shit about you. Didn't even get you a present.
Well, and I mean, it's actually so funny. I mean, to me, it really is. It's all about tracking and tracing as much money as they can, because I think the reality is like that gives them a little bit of power over us. However you want to look at it, it gives them something that they can come back at us. And that's why I loved Bitcoin originally. I would say, like, I know Monero is another cryptocurrency that I really like. Zcash is another one. I haven't looked into it as much recently, but I'll just use like Monero as an example because it is super encrypted, where as long as you're kind of paying through buying Monero with cash, you almost are untraceable. Now the problem, and this is kind of where the recommendation I told you of, like, get on Kraken. Okay, I agree with that, but I'm also telling you something that I dislike in the fact that they're immediately going to track you, because that platform in itself is safer, which there's some benefits to it.
But they got regulations.
It is the regulations are backed by the U.S. government that crypto more or less is trying to get around. But at the same time, now you're all part of that system of what they want.
That's the same thing with YouTube. Is YouTube, for instance, they have rules and regulations so they can pull down your videos. You sacrifice the whole aspect of it's beneficial to use YouTube for starting out, for sure. You're getting your content out there without having to worry about bandwidth charges. But then the issue is when you start saying shit, they can pull down whatever video, whatever they deem is not fit, and not have to give you an explanation on it because you are using their platform. They are helping you, but you got to play ball with their fucking game.
Yeah, they're the boss. Yeah,
it's hard to survive. Damn it.
I don't know. And it really, and that's what I think. I honestly don't know where all this crypto's going, because there's so many changes like that are happening right here, right now. I know, like, on the first form of your tax form on the 1040, it's now asking you, are you involved in cryptocurrency?
And Uber. I did Uber driving for a while. I was making, I think in 2 hours, I was making $100 just in like back-to-back trip. It was always fucking Denny's. Everyone wants like damn grand slam. So I'd have like 10 orders of
at 3 in the morning.
And so it's crazy because then they started saying you are send your tax information. You got to start paying taxes on it. And people were losing a lot of money because for so long they're making so much and there wasn't a way to tax it. And they became to tax it to where Uber is now paying you for sign-up fees. They're paying you to join because they have nobody left after dealing with so much bullshit. And especially in the news now it's like you see an Uber driver get hurt or something like that. And that's going to happen for sure. But it's all over the media because the media is like, good, Uber's down, just kill it. We don't need it anymore. So they're going to find a way to squash it.
Yeah. And honestly, I guess that's where it really does kind of come into the tax games. And that's a whole other thing that I've kind of done in the last 5 years is really learn the tax game as much as I can. And the crypto's kind of that ever moving world. I know I've got my LLC where ultimately I'm just playing the damn tax games of, I guess what I've found at this point in time is like, if I'm a business owner, whether you think my LLC is legit or not, I mean, it can be, I'll just use Scam Coin LLC just as that example. Like you can do whatever LLC, but by whatever name you have, all you have to do is just know a little bit about the IRS tax code, and you're way better off than any other employee, which was probably at least kind of what I'm aware of, like with the Uber drivers, is there's kind of that big debate right now. Well, are they a 1099 employee? Or I'm sorry, maybe not employee, contractor, or are they an employee? Because the tax game is extremely different. And for me as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I know I am way better off. Like I can make way less money as a 1099 contractor than I can as an employee. And I would say my lifestyle is the exact same. Because more or less, it's like what I'm pocketing and I get to keep are ultimately the same. And again, it just all kind of comes down to what the government allows. And right now, it really is crypto's kind of a big unknown as to where that's going to go, because the government's starting to make some changes. And I don't know what that means yet. I don't think any of us really know where it's all going to go. But changes are happening, and it'll be interesting to see how it all rounds out, I guess.
James, we're gonna have to get you on for another episode for sure, but I think my brain's had about enough. It's not you, it's just I get a headache when we start talking about the money and the manipulation. It's a lot of shit. No wonder people get so intimidated by it all. It's like, really, it's if you are looking at it like a basic person that doesn't even have an Amazon Alexa or whatever, like I don't have, you're looking at all these charts and these numbers and these graphs, and you're just like,
it blows your mind.
Take my money. I don't know. What do you want me to do? I trust you. Like, here's my money. It's like giving your money to a Jehovah's Witness. Are you going to understand? Do you think that person's going to understand stocks as well as you think they are? Right. Like, woo! No way.
And you know, one of the things that just going through this industry, because I used to collect people's retirement accounts, and it absolutely kind of drives me insane, but just goes right along with, like, I truly believe people, like, there's so much information out there. It's really hard to grasp all of it. Like you mentioned. And I honestly believe that is kind of way the big money, kind of the government, kind of these bigger players that are involved want it. Because I would tell you, it's like, okay, are you going to send me $500 a month and just, hey, trust me, I'm going to take care of your money? I can almost guarantee 99% of the people are going to say no. But here's where it kind of boggles my mind. People will have no problem sending $500 into their retirement account each and every single month to some guy they do not know that's ultimately doing the exact same thing as me as a trader, but because it's in retirement, there's actually trust there. And I'm not even going to say that there's trust, because I think people are starting to wake up to some degree, but I think there was a whole idea of like, okay, especially like with our folks, and I would say even the older generations, is invest in your retirement. That way you can retire. The money's going to be there. Me and you, we're starting to see all these crashes happen all the damn time. Like they literally happen almost every 8 years right now. This one hasn't, well, I don't know. I guess it's been almost 10 years with this last one, but excuse me.
Wait, how old do you think I am?
I'm guessing 20s, maybe. I don't know, actually.
36.
Geez, so you're the same age as mine. So
I'm 23.
Oh, I was gonna say. So I'm 37, but I mean, I genuinely believe like people have no problem giving their money away in their retirements. They don't even think about that. But yet, say I do the exact same thing, just to use my company as an example. Holman Consulting LLC, give me $500 a month. They'd say, hell no. Who are you?
Well,
and then I ask them,
just
who's
like
your retirement guy?
Just like when I slap the word government on anything, you think it, oh, they know what they're doing. Do they really? That's why it's such a big shock when you find out they don't.
Correct.
It's nuts, dude.
It is. We're in a crazy world, and I'm glad you actually had me on to kind of talk about this crypto, because what the hell's going on? I wish I honestly knew. I wish I could give your viewers like some hard like answers, but I think that's kind of the fun of it right now. Is
I think you filled me up on them, dude. I had questions. You answered every one of them.
And I generally hope I did, because I do believe I know a little bit more than most in this world. But what I would always say is like, if anybody tells you that they know what they're talking about, they're fucking lying, because I'm going to be the first one to tell you, it's like, all right, I've got some ideas, but let's see if they actually pay us. Because if that idea works and we start making money, okay, now we can actually say that idea was right. But I will tell you, I have just as many ideas. And like, I'll just use like my trading results. Like 50% of the trades that I actually take are actually losers. But my losers are cut so short. It's like when I'm losing in a trade, losing money, I get out of it almost immediately because my idea was wrong. But the ones where I start getting paid, I hold on to that thing, because I bought into Bitcoin, just as an example, back in 2019 when it was like $4,120. Okay. That paid me. And I'm still holding some of that position to this day because it's still paying me. It's still a profitable position. Did I have any idea that that idea was going to work out? No. Half of the ideas that I give you, or that maybe even you give me, are probably going to be wrong, but that's okay. You have to be okay in this game to be wrong. It's just when you are right, try to make your millions when you're right. And to your point, I kind of think crypto's going to crash. Whether we've already experienced that, I don't really know. There still might be some more to go. But I think in a long run of all of it, I still think it's easy for me to pay you either in a Bitcoin, an electronic funding through bank to bank. I still believe like that's actually an easier way for me and you to transfer money, barter, whatever you want to call it, than me to actually send you money through the mail as $100 bill.
Next topic we you come on for, we're going to be talking conspiracy theories for sure.
Absolutely. I'm not a huge conspiracy theory, but I will tell you, in the grand scheme of like the finance world and IRS, that's something that it drives me nuts. And I hate the world that I'm in, but I'm of the belief that you fight fire with fire.
Hey, to fight an evil, you got to let a little bit in.
I kind of agree with you. Yeah, that's what I'm doing in this game. And like I said, I'm happy to teach you some more as time goes on with this, but we're in the devil's den when you talk about crypto and all these financial markets, because there's a lot of games that are happening every single day.
Well, James, I'll make sure I link all your links in the description. It's your Twitter and your Instagram, right?
That's the main ones. If people want to reach out to me by email, they can just reach out to me as well through my James at Holman Consulting LLC.com. But yeah, that's kind of my main things that I use these days.
I'll make sure I link everything in the description. And thanks for listening to this episode Out of the Blank.